Good morning, students. Welcome to your online class. I am Mr. Anubhav Lambert and I will be teaching you English literature. We will be studying Lesson 1 Traveling with Grandfather Zoo. I am going to read and explain the whole lesson. Before we start this, there is some character in the story like grandfather, grandmother, Popeye the parrot, and Chip the squirrel, the python, and the narrator. So let's get started. All aboard, shrieked Popeye, grandmother's pet parrot, as we climbed into the Lucknow Express. We were moving for some months from Dehra to Lucknow, and as grandmother had insisted on taking her parrot along, grandfather and I insisted on bringing our pets too, a teenage tiger, that is for grandfathers, and a small squirrel, mine, narrator's squirrel. But we thought it prudent to leave the python behind. Prudent means wise. So over here they are traveling. They decided to travel to Lucknow, and they wanted to move to Lucknow with the train, and from Dehra to Lucknow, and they wanted to take some pets along with them, and that is the Popeye, the parrot, that is for the grandmother's pet, and grandfather pets are that teenage tiger Timothy and the squirrel of the narrator. And they have one more pet they wanted to take along with them, but it is very wise, and that is the python. In those days, trains in India were not so crowded, and it was possible to travel with a variety of creatures. Grandfather had decided to do things in style by traveling first class, so we had a fourth berth compartment of our own, and Timothy the tiger had an entire berth to himself. Later, everyone agreed that Timothy behaved perfectly throughout the journey. Even the guard admitted that he could not have asked for a better passenger. No stealing from vendors, no shouting at coolies, no breaking of railway property, no spitting on the platform. So, in those days, when they are traveling in the train, they over at that time the crowd is not very much, the population is not too much in the train. So and they decided to go in the train, and they first traveling in the first class, and they take the four berth and one berth for the Timothy the tiger, and they all behaved very perfectly, very well, and no shouting, no screaming in the train, and passenger and the and the staff also said that these animals are very well behaved. Now come to the next paragraph. All the same, the journey was not without incident, and before we reached Lucknow, there was excitement enough for everyone. So whenever you traveling some place, there is some incident, there is some adventure. So over here is also the same thing happened. To begin with, Popeye objected to vendors and other people poking their hands in through the windows. Before the train had moved out of the Dehra station, he had nipped two fingers and squeaked a ticket inspector ear. Now squeak means twist or pull. So when the train started moving, they everyone put their hand outside the window. No sooner had the train started moving than Chips May, my squirrel, emerged from my pocket. So as soon as the train started moving, the Chip, the squirrel, name of the squirrel is Chip, emerged out, means move out from the pocket of the narrator to examine his surrounding. Before I could stop him, He was out of the compartment door. As soon as the narrator stopped the squirrel, what did he do? He ran away out of the door, out of the compartment, skirling along the corridor. Skirling means move hurriedly with short, quick steps. And along the corridor. Corridor means a long passage in a building from which doors lead into rooms. So this squirrel moved out very quickly out in the corridor. Chips discovered that the train was a squirrel's paradise. Almost all the passengers having brought large quantities of roasted peanuts before the train pulled out. He had no difficulty in making friends with both children and grown ups, and it was an hour before he returned to our compartment, his tummy almost bursting. So, narrator thought that this place, this whole compartment, this whole train is um, like paradise for the squirrel. So, because everyone having a roasted peanuts, and the squirrel likes peanuts most. Okay, so and easily they become a friend of children and grown-ups people. Now I think I will go to sleep, said grandmother, covering herself with a blanket and stretching out of the berth opposite Timothy's, it being a tiring day. Now the grandmother wanted to sleep, and her berth is in front of the Timothy, the tiger. Aren't you going to eat anything? Asked grandfather. Now our grandfather asked to grandmother, are you want to eat anything? I'm not hungry. I had some soup before we left. You too help yourself from the tiffin basket. Grandmother dozed off, and even Popeye started nodding. Lung means sent to sleep calmly. To sleep by the clackety clack of the wheels and the steady puffing of the steam engine. Well, I am hungry, I said. What did Granny make for us? So over here, grandfather asked to grandmother if you want to eat something, but grandmother said, I already have the soup. You both go and take something to eat from the tiffin. And at that time, the train wheels started moving and making sound, clackety clacks, and the wheels steadily puffing of the steam engine came out. And but the narrator is very hungry and he wanted to eat, and he said, what the granny make for us? Now, hams, sandwiches, boiled eggs, a roasted chicken, gooseberry pie, it's all in the tiffin basket under your berth. So, what did the granny made? Some ham sandwiches, boiled eggs, a roasted chicken, gooseberry pie, and these all the things are kept into the tiffin basket under the berth. I tugged. Tug means pull hard or suddenly. I tugged at the large basket and dragged it into the center of the compartment. The straps were loosely tied. No sooner had I undone them than the lid flew open and I let out a gasp of surprise. Now, when he dragged out the tiffin basket, the strap was very loosely tied, and the tiffin basket was open, and it is the surprise for the narrator. Now, what was the surprise? In the basket was grandfather's pet python, curled up contently. Contently means in a way that shows that one is satisfied. On the remains of our dinner, grandmother had insisted that we leave the python behind, and grandfather had let it loose in the garden. Somehow it had managed to snug itself into the tiffin basket. Well, what are you staring at? Asked grandfather from his corner. It's the python, I said, and it had finished all our dinner. So, what was the surprise when he taking out the tiffin basket? The python, the grandfather python, was there in the basket, and he started moving out from the tiffin basket. And now the grandfather asked, what is in the corner? Now the narrator said, it is the python. And this python ate all the dinner. Grandfather joined me, and together we looked down at what remained of the food. Python doesn't chew, they swallow. Outlined along the length of the large snake's sleek body were the distinctive shape. Distinctive means the characteristic of one person or thing, means whatever the python eats, they make a shape on the body. So over here, shape of a chicken, a pie, and 6 boiled egg. That means the python ate all these things. We couldn't make out the ham sandwiches, but presumably means probably those had been eaten too, because there was no sign of them in the basket. Means everything, uh, most probably everything was being eaten by the python. Only a few apples remained. Eventually, the python did not care for apples. Grandfather snapped the basket shut and pushed it back beneath the berth. Snapped means break suddenly and completely. We must not let grandmother see him, he said. She might think we brought him along on purpose. Well, I am hungry, I complained. So, over here, grandmother doesn't know that this python came along with them. Now, the grandmother now the just then Chip returned from one of his forays. Forays means a sudden attack, and pretended me with a peanut. Thanks, I said. If you keep bringing me peanuts all night, I might last until morning. So uh, now the chef returned, and what did he bring along with him? He bring some peanuts. Now the grandmother said, if you bring like that, I'm going to be full. You know? So grandfather had begun to nod, and the only one who was wide awake was the squirrel, still intent on investigating distant compartments. Investigating means formal inquiries to discover facts of an incident. Now, a little after midnight, there was a great clamor. Clamor means great noise and commotion at the end of the corridor. Grandfather and I woke up. Timothy growled in his sleep, and Popeye made complaining noise. Okay. Suddenly there were cries of sharp, sharp, snake, snake. Grandfather was on his feet in a moment. He looked under the berth. The tiffin basket was empty. The python's out, he said, and dashed out of our compartment in his pajamas. I was close behind. About a dozen passengers were bunched together outside the washroom door. Anything wrong? Asked grandfather casually. We can't get into the toilet, said someone. There a huge snake inside. So at the mid of the night, this python came out and go into the corridor, and the people of the compartment were shouting, and this python was moving into the toilet, and it was a very huge snake. Now let me take a look, said grandfather. I know all about snakes. The passenger made way for him, and he entered the washroom to find the python curled up in the wash basin. After its heavy meal, it had become thirsty, and finding the lid of the tiffin basket easy to pray up had set out in search of water. Grandfather gathered up the sleepy, overfed python and stepped out of the washroom. So, um, the python eat too much and he wanted to drink water. That is why he came out from the tiffin basket in search of the water, and he moved into the toilet for the water to drink. Now, what happened? The passenger hastily made way for them. Nothing to worry about, said grandfather cheerfully. It's just a harmless young python. He's had his dinner already, so no one is in any danger. And he marched back to our compartment with the python in his arms. As soon as I was inside, he bolted the door. So, grandfather said there is no harm with this young python because he already ate and his stomach was full. Grandmother was sitting up on her berth. I knew you would do something foolish behind my back, she scolded. Now, grandmother scolded grandfather. I know you do it something foolish. You told me you would got rid of that creature, and all the time you have been hiding it from me. Grandfather tried to explain that we had nothing to do with it, that the python had smugged itself into the tiffin basket. Means import or expose secretly inside himself. But grandmother was unconvinced. Means this grandmother cannot believe on grandfather that this python come secretly inside the tiffin basket. What will Mabel do when she sees it? She cried despairingly. My aunt Mabel was a school teacher in Lucknow. She was going to share our new house and she was terrified of all reptiles, particularly snakes. Terrified means caused to feel extreme fear because now this where they are moving. It was the house of Aunt Mabel, and they all going to live there in the new house. And this Aunt Mabel was very frightened and fear with these reptiles. We won't let her see it, said grandfather. Back it goes into the tiffin basket. Early next morning, the train steamed into Lucknow. Aunt Mabel was on the platform to receive us. Means when he reached to Lucknow, Aunt Mabel was there to receive all the people. Grandfather let all the other passengers get off before he emerged from the compartment with Timothy on a chain. I had Chip in my pocket, suitcase in both hands. Now Popeye stayed perched. Perched means rest on something on grandmother's shoulder. Eyes the busy platform with considerably distrust. Aunt Mabel, a lover of good food, immediately spotted the tiffin basket, picked it up, and said, It's not very heavy. I can carry it out to the taxi. I hope you kept something for me. A whole chicken, I said. We hardly ate anything, said grandfather. So, the, everyone was started moving, and they had a bag, two bags in their hands, and grandmother asked to give the tiffin basket because Aunt Mabel was very fond of the food and he wanted that tiffin basket to carry. And Aunt Mabel said, I think you have left something to eat for myself. Now it's all your aunt, I added. Oh, good, explained Aunt Mabel. It's being aged since I tasted something cooked by your grandmother. And after that, there was no getting the basket away from her. Glancing at it, I thought I saw the lid bulging. Bulging means swelling, but grandfather had tied it down quite firmly this time, and there was little livelihood of its suddenly bursting open. And huge, enormous means huge, 1950 Chevrolet taxi was waiting outside the station, and the family tumbled means fa- fall or fall into the station into the taxi. Now Timothy got onto the back seat, leaving enough room for grandfather and me. Aunt Mabel sat in front with grandmother, the tiffin basket on her lap. Now everyone were out of the station, and they hired the taxi 1950 Chevrolet, and Timothy sit on the back seat with the grandfather and the narrator, and the Aunt Mabel and grandmother sit in the front seat with the tiffin basket on her lap. Now tell the taxi driver where to take us, dear, said grandmother. He's looking rather nervous. Aunt Mabel gave instruction to the driver, and the taxi shot off in a cloud of dust. Now the taxi, Aunt Mabel giving the instruction where to go. The taxi driver was moving very fast, and cloud of dust was being made. When here we go, said grandfather, I am looking forward to settling into the new house. Popeye perched proudly on grandmother's shoulder, kept on suspicious eye on the quivering tiffin basket. Now the Popeyes move on to the grandmother's shoulder. All aboard, he squawked, all aboard. Now, when we got to our new house, we found a light breakfast waiting for us on the dining table. It isn't much, said Aunt Mabel, but we will supplement it with the contents of your hamper. So, the narrator said there is some light breakfast on the dining table. Then the Aunt Mabel said, not very much, but there is some supplements with your hamper, means that tiffin basket. And placing the basket on the table, she removed the lid. Now the Aunt Mabel removed the lid. The python was half asleep with an apple in its mouth. Aunt Mabel was no Eve. Eve means Eve, the first woman, according to some religious, was tempted by the serpents to eat a forbidden apple in the Garden of Eden. So this is the example given by the Aunt Mabel. For Aunt Mabel, Aunt Mabel was no Eve to be tempted. She fainted away. Now the Aunt Mabel removed the lid of the tiffin, and what did he saw the python uh, with an apple in its mouth. And now when the Aunt Mabel saw this python, she got fainted. Grandfather promptly means very quickly picked up the python, took it into the garden, and dragged it arranged around something or into the upon the tree or somewhere, it over a branch of a guava tree. Now when Aunt Mabel recovered, she insisted that there was a huge snake in the tiffin basket. We showed her the empty basket. You are seeing things, said grandfather. It must be the heat, I said. So Aunt Mabel, when he wake up, he said something is inside the tiffin basket, but everyone said no, no, there is nothing is inside the tiffin basket, and you have some doubt. So Grandmother said nothing, but Popeye broke into shriek of maniacal. Maniacal means exhibiting extremely loud or wild behavior. Now, this Popeye started, the parrot started like a maniacal laughter, and soon everyone, including a slightly hysterical, unable to control one feeling. Aunt Mabel was doubly up with laughter. Means uh, everyone was hiding what the Aunt Mabel have seen, and they try to make Aunt Mabel fool. Okay, and the grandfather said, because of the heat you got faint, but it is not such like that. There is a python in the tiffin. So this is the story. Student, I hope all of you understand the chapter. Thank you. Stay safe and keep learning.